Hi guys, Dave Pinson, your video for Jesus. Today I do want to talk I do want to talk about what I was going to try to do the last video about, and then the Holy Spirit intervened and it turned into a whole other story. But I want to talk about a foothold for the devil. It says be angry but don't sin in your anger, or else you give a foothold for the devil. So one thing I discovered in my whole in June, this has been an amazing month, even though the Lord uh, I wouldn't say shut down, even though I had to pause my ministry here in the Philippines in my house to like 70 people, children to adults, because of finances. He's still giving me so much this month. He's given me a freedom like I've never known before. And during my waking hours, I've had the ability to train my mind, or I'm training my mind to control my evil imagination, and it's working because I believe I can. And I always did, but once I realized that I'm not born with a nature that has to sin. I'm born with the death nature, but my imagination is selfish. So we're trying to get away from that. So during my waking hours, I'm able to overcome a lot of stuff, and I've had so much victory, and I'm so excited. But one thing I do notice is I still have two spots that I talked about briefly in my last video. One of them is my half waking hours. I'm very weak in those times. And part of that, instead of just giving up, because whenever I have a weakness moments and I feel like this is it, you do have a sin nature. See where your mind's at. Then I realize that that's the enemy trying to get me to stop what I've already discovered and to go back to my old ways. But I also realize that my imagination, Tozer talks about that. So I think it's in Pursuit of God that our imagination needs to be retrained to God, and God is real and He's living inside of me, and have that be part of your vision so that you realize that you have victory. Because when you do, you will. Anyway. But when I'm half asleep, that's the weak part. But that's been trained since I was like 10, 11 years old. I've had this evil imagination trained for all those years, and no one ever told me not to do it, really, since I got saved until Charles Finney, which I just read for a month ago, because of it's a long story, but until I came to the epiphany and the realization, the Holy Spirit finally showed me that I can overcome this stuff. But the other place that I want to talk about today, right now, is what I see in someone who's very close to me, which usually means a wife or a child or some family member, and me. That whenever something vexes you, it just pops up, and the anger just explodes, and it's like, how do I control that, right? Because what happens is, like, for me, let me just say what happens for me. I can't speak about it with other people how it works for them, but things bother you, right? But you're wanting to forgive and forget, and you're wanting to take your mind captive, and you don't want to be angry because don't give the devil a foothold, right? But it really bothers you, and you really are not releasing it when it bothers you, because we're only human, and it's our human imagination, and it's always self, guys. When it bothers you, it's because you feel like it's doing you an injustice, right? It does you an injustice. My brother and I used to have this saying, no good deed will go unpunished. So, because when you do things for people and then they don't do anything for you, you get upset, or when you're trying to help somebody and they don't listen to you, and then the bad thing that you thought would happen happens, you get upset because they didn't listen to you. But you don't. But it's almost like this is all about your imagination, right? And this is about your consciousness. So it's almost like it's unconscious, but you know it's happening. And then when it comes to fruition, you just explode for a minute. And I'm the kind of person that explodes for a minute and then I'm fine. As a matter of fact, I had some friends, um, from some elders from a church where I used to be pretty big up into. I would say I always call myself associate pastor, but it wasn't official, but it was between me and the pastor. It was sort of an understanding. And one of the elders told me, yeah, you're the kind of guy, Dave. If we want to tell you something we know you're not going to like, you're going to blow up at first, and then you're going to come back and say you're right. And that's what I'm talking about. So that's what we're talking about today. And that's the part where the devil gets a foothold in you. And whenever you talk about stuff like this, I had a friend once in a men's Bible study that I used to co-anchor. I used to co-run this men's Bible study, um, And one of my favorite Bible teachers at the time was a guy named Bill Ritchie. He was from Calvary Chapel, Vancouver. And he had this amazing sermon called Dancing with the Devil, right? And what he was saying is whenever we make a place in our heart for the devil, and then we just kind of go with it a little bit. And he called it dancing with the devil. And most, I think most honest believers, especially, yeah, most of us will admit that we've done that and that we do that at times. And whenever we sin, that's what we're doing. So when I brought up this brother got angry. He was upset. He was angry. He didn't care who Bill Ritchie was. And he was a youth pastor, but he was angry. And he was like, "How dare you say it? What's wrong with you?" Like he wanted to punch me in the mouth. I hate the devil. What are you talking about? Nobody dances with the devil. I'm like, dude, he's probably the most, I don't know what happened to him. I don't know him that well. But people like that, the foothold of anger is already there. And it's kind of like, I think you protest too much because it may be true. And, you know, it's easy for us to do these things. And I wouldn't even call it the devil all the time because the world, the flesh, and the devil, right? The world tells you that you have a right to this, like you have a right to this. And I just posted something I read in Oswald Chambers about don't ever seek justice. In other words, for yourself. That's what he means. Don't seek justice for yourself because these people owe me, and this is, I have a right to this. And he goes, because when you do that, you're not focused on God, you're focusing on yourself. Because all sin comes from the self-knowledge. Pride is the ultimate, maybe, but all sin, even anger, it's all because they hurt me and they upset me, and it just frustrates me. And then I will have this feeling like, yeah, but that deserves to happen because, of course, anybody would be frustrated. I'm only human. I'm gonna punch that person in the mouth. And when you're feeling that, you're in sin right there. You're in sin right there when you have that anger flash. So we're talking about how to overcome the anger flash, and I would tell you right now that it's I'm not saying that I know how to do it all the way, but I'm saying that if you take every moment captive with your mind, this is what I'm trying to train my mind to overcome my imagination. And whenever I feel upset or hurt or slighted, whenever I get my feelings hurt because the people I love are not responding the way I want them to respond, and I feel like that they don't respect me, they don't, all those things. It's all about me, right? And there's no place for that for the follower of Jesus. That's what I'm trying to say. And I don't want to have those because I don't want a place for the devil because I don't want the devil to get into my relationships. And I don't want the devil to explode. And I don't want him to explode against bad people either. I don't want any explosions here. Thank you very much. What does the proverb say? A soft answer turns away wrath. Well, I want my spirit. No, here, let's say it this way. We have an indwelling Holy Spirit in us. Get your imagination wrapped into that. Quit thinking about yourself. Quit thinking about your own feelings and all this stuff. Quit thinking about it for a minute and realize that you have the Holy Spirit living in you. And if you haven't really grasped the intense, amazing power of that, or the ability to overcome, then you need to pray about that. Because the scripture is clear that all true believers have the Holy Spirit in them. And when you walk in the Spirit, you're not fulfilling that stuff, right? So the first way we learn, the way that we overcome this explosion stuff that easily besets me still, apparently, not very much, but when it does, I'm horrified at myself, is to take that knowledge of the Holy Spirit and to just realize that you want to be walking in the Spirit and believe in it, and quit saying, well, I'm only human, because that's a thing you hear from the pulpit. That's a thing I've said before. That's a thing whenever I start talking about holiness in the past, I don't know how I'm going to do moving forward. Hopefully I'll quit doing that. How do I say? But when you sin, you're fine, so don't worry about it. Or we're only human. And this is not true. This is not true. And this is a thing that I want to tell you. We are not only human. What are you talking about? Because you've been regenerated. You've been born again. The only human, I think, is the person who's not saved, who doesn't have the indwelling spirit, because you're only human plus. So people say, well, salvation, Jesus plus. No, this is the opposite. You plus Jesus. You have the Holy Spirit in you. You have the power of the living God. The God that created the universe is living inside of you, dwelling inside of you. You have all the holiness of the Old Testament, all the holiness of the temple, all the holiness of all the. I just did a thing on Leviticus. All the what do you call them? Festivals. All the holiness of God, the glory of God is living inside of you. And you can't overcome your moments of flashness of humanity? Yes, you can. I'll just close with this story. It's kind of a cool story. William Booth's one of my favorite. He's one of my heroes. Most of my heroes come from the 19th century, by the way, just so you know. Steve Gregg is my favorite living Bible teacher, and his life and his testimony. If you know other people like him, let me know. If you know people that are living by faith, and that anyway, he's a rare bird in ministerial world. But William Booth was one of my favorites. More people got saved through him, and I think how many hundred in some countries in 40 years. Their outgrowth was amazing. They went into the gutters. They went into the guttermost, not the uttermost, the guttermost places. People were throwing urine and feces on them and trying to kill them and beat them up, and they did kill a few. Just like what happened to Wesley and Whitfield. People don't want to hear it. The devil doesn't want to hear it. He's gonna stop you, right? But so he was amazing. And so the Salvation Army, before they became a social, what do you call it? Before they started focusing on the physical aspects of poverty, and there's nothing wrong with the physical aspects, but the focus initially, the idea of the whole idea was Salvation Army. I think God's more concerned about your soul than your physical needs. Not that He's not concerned about that. But one time, I think it was his granddaughter came to him from a meeting and then said, "How did it go?" And I'm going to try to imitate him. I heard Ravenhill do this, so I don't know if I could do it. He said, apparently he had this very deep, booming voice. "Well, how did it go?" And she says, "Oh, it didn't go too well." I forgot what she called him, granddad or whatever. "Well, why not?" "Well, because nobody came forth. We were out there and we were in the streets. And they go out in the middle of the night. All the drunks and the prostitutes and even children were drunks in those days and prostitutes. It was a dark, dark world in 19. You think it's bad now? No. No, my end times friends, it's not worse than it's ever been. There was some horrible stuff going on back in the 19th century. You are not aware of your histories, therefore you are not aware of reality. Anyway, she said, "Well, it didn't go well. Nobody came forward." "Well, what did you do?" "Well, we prayed and we prayed and we prayed and we prayed, and then nothing happened." And then he goes, "Oh, this is not good. You didn't. You failed." Or so, I don't know what words he used, something like that. This is the idea of it. And she says, "But granddad, we did our best." In other words, she was saying, "Well, we're only human. We did our best." And you know what he said? "That's not good enough." So, "Well, how can we do more than our best?" And he said, "Because God's living inside of you. That's how." So that's what I got to say about that. God bless you guys. Ta-ta for now.